What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fit Couch. Today, Junior and I are going to talk about the top five best glute exercises. All right, everyone likes the glute exercises. Everyone wants the big glutes. I know all you girls out there, you want to have the big stacked glutes. So we're going to talk to you guys today about what our favorite exercises are and why. And I know this is a very nuanced conversation, so we're going to get into some of the nuances with all of this. And it may not be as simple as there's the five best exercises. So we'll talk about why. I'll tell you my top five and why I like them. But everyone's different, and lots of exercises are dope. There's a lot of nuance to that, and I hope to get into that today.
Yeah, let's get it.
All right. So when it comes to building muscle, not just the glutes, but any muscle, we have to work on progressive overload, right? Which means that we're adding tension to the muscle over time. And that could be more reps, it could be more weight, it can be better technique or better mind-muscle connection. There's a few different ways that we can improve that progressive overload. And some exercises are easy to do that. Some exercises aren't as easy to do that. We still have to work on recovering. So I think those are the pieces of the puzzle that we're going to try to mix together today and figure out. You can try some of this stuff on your own and figure out maybe what the best program for you looks like. Again, this is according to as if you don't have any injuries. We're going to assume that you have no knee or lower back issues. If you do, there's obviously the nuance gets even more in depth, and we can you're going to have to work around those injuries. So just for the sake of the conversation, we're assuming that there's no major injuries going on. All right. So, Junior, I'm just going to kick this off and ask you if you had one glute exercise, if you could pick one, what would it be?
I would probably say two.
All right.
I'm kind of torn between two.
Yeah.
myself.
I would say it depends. So, go
Yeah,
ahead.
exactly. Yeah.
All right. What's
I mean, the first one is probably well known from, in general, it's just the hip thrusters. I'd say that's probably the top one. Or I like the reverse lunge with a little bit of an incline or deficit
that's
reverse
great.
lunges on a Smith machine. I find that one successful with me, myself, and clients as well.
Yeah, so the hip thrust is great. In fact, there was this big debate on the internet a while ago. It was like, what's better, the squat or the hip thrust? And in the studies that they did, it showed that the hip thrust and the squat built the exact same amount of muscle, that they were even. There was no difference in effectiveness. But again, I think there's nuance with that because you can only do so many squat sets per week.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just squat 3 days a week and like really work on overloading on your
Volume.
squats. Yeah, you're gonna crumble, you're gonna fall apart, you're gonna break apart after a few weeks of that, and you're gonna no longer be able to recover or progress. Now, the hip thrust is one of those that's a little easier to recover from, and it's not beating up your quads and your hamstrings as much as the squat would. So that's why I say it depends, right?
Yeah.
I like the hip thrust is great. And one thing I like about we'll use the squat and the hip thrust together. The squat has a lot of tension in the glute at the bottom when you're in that stretch. You're all the way at the bottom in the whole of the squat. You're getting huge amounts of tension on your glutes. You're stretched under tension. But then as you come up to the top during that peak contraction, there's really, because gravity is pushing down on your spine, it's not pulling your hips back, you lose tension at the top.
Yeah.
Right? Now with the hip thrust, you get the most tension at the top, at that peak. So it's different parts of the range is giving you different vectors of force. So I guess that goes to what's better, right? And it's not like you have to only pick one. The great thing is we can do many things. But I like the squat and the hip thrust coupled together because you get the tension in the stretch on the squat, and you get the more tension at the peak contraction on the hip thrust. So I feel like they connect well together.
Complement each other.
Yes, they complement each other well. But you also made a good point of the lunge, the reverse lunge, like a deficit. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's like one foot's on a step. You're stepping back into a reverse lunge, so your back knee is dropping towards the floor, but that elevated front foot gives you a little extra stretch at the bottom, and allows your glute to move through more range of motion.
Kind of emphasizing on the stretch part for the squats in a way. With the
Yeah,
reverse lunge.
exactly. But instead of a bilateral movement like a squat, it's a unilateral movement. Right?
Overemphasizes on the stretch.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those three are, I mean, there's so many great glute exercises, right? But what's really interesting to me isn't what exercises are available, but like the nuance and how to program them. All right. So squats, for the history of time, has always been the known squats is the best glute builder. But is it? And like I said, they had these tests, or they ran some trials and did some studies, and the hip thrust and the squat came out even.
Yeah.
But now you can't really equate volume, which would be like, when I say volume, I'm going to say total sets performed.
Maybe in a week or
Yeah,
a day.
in a week, you could accumulate way more sets of hip thrusts than you could of squats that were like hard working sets.
Yeah. Close to zero. Like
like
reps
close,
in reserve.
Yeah, close to failure or
Yeah.
to failure. You're going to be able to push way more sets to that limit with the hip thrust. So one could argue that over the week, the hip thrust might be more beneficial because you can hit it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you could recover in between each session and still push hard. Whereas if you tried to squat hard Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
Yeah.
you're going to fall apart. You're going to
Yeah.
crumble. Like, that's not going to last very long.
Yeah.
So, with training clients for you, Junior, what have you found to be the difference between, say, the reverse lunge and the hip thrust and the squat?
I mean, it depends on the client. Maybe the first coming, try to do something simple to where they'll get the grasp of it. So saying like if we're trying to work on the glutes specifically, and I'm just trying to get them to like get it real quick, get the mind to muscle, hip thrust is probably the easier one for sure, compared to like a squat because there's multiple joints working at the same time.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I guess if you're trying to get like a good mind muscle connection, if you've never done that before, then hip thrust is probably good to start with, and then maybe once you get more, experience and know how your body works as a beginner, then just maybe add the squats in there later on.
And the other thing with squats is they're going to build your legs.
Yeah.
And not everyone who wants to build their glutes necessarily wants to build their legs.
Mm-hmm.
So with the hip thrust, you're going to get a lot less quad development.
Yeah.
Which is going to build your quads less.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be a good thing if your goal is to like keep small legs and grow your glutes.
True.
Then maybe if the glutes are the only thing you want to focus on, then squats may be something that you do minimally 1 or 2 sets a week, and you don't overload your squats too much.
Yeah.
In order to prevent your quads from your legs from getting too big.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to know what the glutes do. The glutes do a few motions. One is they're responsible for hip extension, which means when we go from a bent over position and we stand up and we drive our hips forward, that's hip extension. Like you would get out of the bottom of a squat, or when you're doing a hip thrust, that's hip extension. Another thing that the glutes do is hip abduction. So abducting, for those who don't know, it's like if I'm standing straight up and I pull my leg out to the side, I'm abducting it away from the midline of my body. That would be hip abduction. All right, so the glutes work in that plane. So if we want a good, well-rounded glute program, we want to make sure we're doing exercises that put tension on the hip extension and the hip abduction, right? So the glute maximus really fires a lot during the hip extension, right? So when we're doing hip thrusts and squats, we're getting a lot of glute max, but we're accumulating a lot of fatigue. There's a lot of recovery involved for recovering from heavy squats, right? And again, like I said, the legs are involved too. Hip thrusts are a little easier to recover from, so we can get more sets in per week. And then things like cable kickbacks, or maybe if you guys are sitting on the machine at your gym, if you have a machine, the abduction where you push out with your knees and you push against the resistance, that's another great way to work the medius and the minimus part of the glute. That isn't very taxing at all. You can accumulate tons and tons and tons of reps and sets with that and recover fine. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people who could probably do that, a little bit of that every day.
Yeah.
And you could easily get away with doing high volume amounts of sets on Monday, Wednesday, Friday with a very little fatigue accumulation, right? So when we talk about building a program, it's like, okay, what's the most effective on paper, and then what can we recover from and come back and do again?
Yeah.
So that's where it gets nuanced, right? Because in the past it was like just shut up and squat, which I think there's some truth to that. But if we really want to maximize glute growth, we need to find a way to increase, to progressively overload, and that's going to be things like adding weight, adding reps, which means we have to recover in between sessions to get stronger.
Yeah, being able to come back and still perform at that highest level.
Yes.
So you can do progressive overload.
Yes, and another thing that's great is like if you don't have an abduction machine, you can use bands.
Mm-hmm.
And man, in the moment when you're using those bands, they burn to the bone. I mean, you can get a deep burn, but the next day you'll feel fine. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe in the beginning you have soreness that it lasts a day or two, but very quickly you're able to come back and do it again and do it again and do it again. And you can probably do 10 sets of 20 or 25 reps.
Yeah.
With the band and recover just fine. Mm-hmm. But with squats or hip thrusts, there's no way you're doing 10 sets of 20 reps and recovering. I mean, you're just going to be destroyed. So, yeah, to basically break that down is the best glute exercises. My answer to almost anything when people ask me such a straightforward question is usually it depends. Mm-hmm. And it does depend on all these variables. So, let's put it in, let's say, if you were to pick 3 exercises for glutes, what would those 3 be?
I think the hip abduction would be a good little isolation if they have that machine. Mm-hmm. And then the hip thrust, and then probably the squats as well.
Or the reverse, yeah. I think
and then the reverse lunge, you might, I guess it depends for that.
Yeah, I know. See, on paper, straightforward, I would say the squat, the hip thrust, and like the reverse deficit lunge would be like the top 3.
Also, the squats is great for everything else, not just for the glutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for sure.
That's why I would say the squats.
Yeah, and it's like those would make my top 3, but you can't do those 3 exercises hard and overload every other day of the week, right?
So that depends as well. It's like came to my mind is like maybe someone who's a professional would just need specifically to do that glute. So maybe that's another thing right there for which ones they would choose. Maybe squats is not the one that they want to really progressive overload. If
like they're just trying to get their glutes.
Depends.
Yeah.
Professional for their sake, it might be not squats.
Yeah, it could just be more isolation work.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So if I think, in my opinion, I think that it's great to have some sort of squat or lunge. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be both, but I think it's good to have a squat and then some sort of single leg like unilateral exercise like the reverse deficit lunge or a Bulgarian split squat. Mm-hmm. Those would be great. Having a squat in there and having the hip thrust. I think those 3 are great. The only thing is, if you're trying to get 20 sets or 25 sets in a week, it's going to be hard to get there with those 3 exercises and not run yourself into the ground.
Sure.
So, in my opinion, I think that having like a squat or a hip thrust in there, maybe a couple hard sets a week, and then really start to increase the weight and reps on those exercises week to week to week, but focus on accumulating way more volume with some bands or some abduction or cable kickbacks where you can progressively overload with more and more workload without getting the fatigue buildup.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd agree.
So, the top 3 glute exercises on paper, I would say some sort of split squat or lunge, reverse lunge or deficit lunge or Bulgarian split squat, a regular squat, and a hip thrust. On paper, I think those have the best bang for your buck. But when we're talking about week after week after week, month after month after month, year after year after year, those are going to get pretty stale. You can end up with overuse injuries, and your fatigue buildup is going to happen so much that you're going to get burned out, or you're going to have to take more deloads more often, where you cut your volume in half and take breaks. Whereas if we're doing kickbacks and band work, we can do a lot more. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So maybe ditch, if you're doing band work and you're doing abductions, skip the 3 sets of 10. I mean, you can get away with 5, 6, 7, 8 sets for things like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the sky's the limit with that. It's hard to overtrain those exercises, but with squats and hip thrusts, you can definitely overtrain.
Yeah. A little trick as well with those bands, you can do a little pre-exhaust if you're lacking the feeling of your glutes when you're doing hip thrusts. You can do those bands first. It's a little quick tip.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's
If you
another
have a hard
way.
time like feeling your glutes in the hip thrust, doing some abductions or some band work first to kind of fire them up, get a little pump, and then when you go into the hip thrust, you're connected with your glutes more.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy. I mean, I would say that's even a great strategy for squats as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The main thing is, are you excited to do it? Are you able to overload it every week and work harder? And are you able to recover so that you can come back and do it again?
Yeah.
You know, if you're only doing 1 leg day a week, then yeah, you could probably get away with doing a crap ton of squats and lunges.
Might not be fun during.
Yeah, it may not be fun, but if you're doing 2 or 3 leg workouts a week, and you can take those 20 sets that you're doing and split them up over a 3-day period,
Yeah.
not only are you going to be able to push harder, but you're going to be able to get to that 20, maybe you can even do 25, 30, or 40 sets
Yeah.
by adding in some, abduction, some band work.
And it'll keep it fun for you as well if you do
And
those
keep
3.
it, yeah, exactly. It's got to be fun and exciting. And if you're overloading squats and hip thrusts
Yeah.
every other day, I mean, good luck after a few weeks. You're going to be burned out.
Yeah. Or maybe as well, since it was 3 days, if you don't know which one you want to start with, you can do 1 day, start with the squats. Day 2, start with, hip thrusters. That's also another
Oh, yeah.
good way.
No,
why,
exactly. Have
you
like
know,
one main exercise, like your squat on Monday,
Yeah.
hip thrusts on Wednesday,
Yeah.
Bulgarian split squats on Friday, and then after those main exercises, you're doing abduction, band work, and just accumulating tons of fatigue or sets that way.
Just if you're worried about which one has more, maybe that gives you that extra development.
Yeah.
You're just doing all 3.
Well, that's a good point too, because if you're doing the squats and then the hip thrust and then the lunges, by the time you get halfway through your hip thrust sets or your lunges,
Yeah.
you're not able to put as much effort into it as if it was the only main big exercise you had that day. If you did squats on Monday, you're going to be able to put a lot of work and drive into those squats.
Yeah.
Wednesday, you're not fatigued from the 5 sets of squats you did.
Yeah.
Now you can hit the hip thrust fresh. Then you go to Friday, and now we're doing Bulgarian split squats. You're not just cooked from the hip thrust and the squats, trying to push through the split squats. You're fresh. You're going to feel good. You're going to be able to put more intent into it,
And
right?
then it'll allow you to recover for next Monday.
Yeah, especially if you're doing it
squats.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because then
Yeah.
after Friday you have 2 days in between
Yeah.
to get a little bit extra recovery. So actually, it might be wise to put your hardest exercise on Friday that really beats you up the most, because then you'll have 2 days to recover before you come back
That makes sense. Yeah.
on Monday.
Yeah,
so
so-
that actually could be a great way to end the week with your hardest. But again, you got to listen to your body and see, like, am I getting stronger for reps over time? If you're not, then either maybe you need to learn how to train harder and push yourself harder, or you're already pushing hard, you're taking sets to failure, and maybe you need to back off or split your volume up, your workload up over a different span of days rather than trying to get it all in 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, I'd say so. And then if you do get to a high amount of weight with like back squats, then maybe it's easy to just come back to it with maybe 2 sets of that really heavy, and then you slowly progress yourself instead of starting with just 4 sets of that really heavy, fatiguing weight.
Yeah, and then
know?
there's the part that, like, it's about, part of this is pushing hard. Are we pushing hard enough to keep
good
growing, right? And good technique. Are we pushing hard with good technique? Now, I find that there's a lot of people who are more excited about certain exercises than others, and they put more will, more passion, more effort into those exercises. So for someone who really loves to feel that glute pump and like loves to drive hard on the hip thrust, well, then maybe the hip thrust is a better exercise than the squats for them, because maybe with squats they're not as excited and they're not pouring as much passion into each set, which will definitely, that'll add up over time, when you're really putting your effort into it. And sometimes people feel excited about hip thrust because you can feel the immediate glute pump.
Yeah.
And you don't really
It's
feel
rewarding,
that with
fast
squats.
rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. With squats, you don't. It's very,
really
very hard to
know.
feel a glute pump, and if that's what you're searching for, it may be harder to be as excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
So hip thrust could be great for. I mean, you could hip thrust Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Essentially, you could squat Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but
Realistically,
you're not going to be able to put. You're not going to be able to push really hard on all those sets. One might have to be heavy. One might have to be light. You're probably better going really hard one day and then saving some other glute work for another day. That would be my suggestion. Again, that's there's not one way to skin a cat.
Yeah.
Right? So
I say another important thing with the back squats, feels like we see people in the gym that they have a lot of weight on the bar, but they still look kind of small. So I think it's really important to emphasize on form. Even though you have a lot of weight on the bar for back squats, feels like it's a well-known common thing, you know? So the form and tempo is really important for sure.
yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting deep enough to get a glute stretch. You're getting down far enough, and you're getting enough reps to actually build muscle. Because if you're just doing sets of like 3, 4, or 5, yeah, you're going to build muscle for a little while, but that's going to cap off pretty soon, and you're not going to build nearly as much muscle as you probably would if you did sets of 7, 8, 10, 12 with squats.
Or it won't happen as fast as you want it to.
Yeah, so you can get stronger, but I think that generally when we talk about hypertrophy, you want to get stronger for reps. You want the reps to get stronger for a higher amount of reps.
Good quality reps, you know?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
not bouncing out or you're slamming, you know,
Yeah.
from the bottom section.
Yeah, and it's kind of like bicep curls. With the preacher curl, it's really hard at the bottom and then it gets easier. But then when you do like an incline curl, it's really easy at the bottom but then harder at the top. So those two things pair well together because the tension is harder at different parts of the range of motion. And I think that's why I really like squats and hip thrusts, because they're polar opposites on where you get the most tension.
Yeah.
So now you're like not creating any weak points. But I think there's a lot of value in doing abduction and cable kickbacks. Just don't be shy. You can recover from a lot more than you think you can when it comes to exercises like that.
Yeah. I say the abduction is healthy for sure for preventing you from possible injuries. 'Cause when you open up, that's a higher risk.
Oh yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah,
where
definitely.
You get injured, pull the inside of your leg or something like that.
Yeah,
So-
and then the squats too. They're working adductors and hamstrings and glutes. You're getting a lot of
How to
other
properly
leg work.
use your body.
Yeah, and so you are getting a lot of stimulus with a squat for the glutes as well. But if your goal is purely to grow your glutes, and maybe have some muscle definition in other parts of your body, but your goal is to really train the glutes, I say
Quick as
train.
possible.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
say train the glutes 3 times a week, and have one of those days more of like a pump day that's more isolated, focused.
Yeah.
Or you have a compound movement that's only like 1 or 2 hard sets.
Yeah.
But I just think there's no reason why you have to pick one
And stick to it.
and just stick to it. Try it. Do it for 8 or 12 weeks. Let yourself overload. And then when you get kind of burned out, change the order, change the exercises. But I would say I usually would caution not to just go in and do something different every time.
Yeah.
Give yourself like a period of time to keep getting better at certain movements.
It's like 8 weeks. It's a
Yeah,
good
8
amount.
weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. I mean, you could probably do the same movements indefinitely,
But to
and be
like
fine.
figure out which ones work for you though.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Not waste your time, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, a hinge movement. So like a hip thrust or a squat. Squat isn't really a hinge, but your hips do flex and extend. So you are doing hip extension. Or a 45-degree hypers, like reverse hypers.
Yeah.
Those are great for
Yeah,
glutes. You
sure.
can recover from those really quick. So I think that the best bang for your buck is definitely going to come. The best return on your investment is going to come from squats and hip thrusts and like Bulgarian split squats, for example. But doesn't mean you should stop at that.
Yeah.
And you can only do so much of those
Yeah.
before you're burned out.
Just
So-
remembered one that we forgot is RDOs. That's a super popular one and a very good one as well for the stretch.
Yeah, the RDLs are great for the glutes. I know that they cook my hamstrings a lot more than my glutes.
Yeah.
So, but they are a great addition. That's another exercise
Yeah.
that you could add into the mix.
Maybe it takes some skill, so maybe that adds some excitement back into the glutes. Try to get those glutes.
Yeah, there's a
firing little
learning
better,
curve.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, big difference between deadlift and RDL though, for sure, I would say.
Yeah. So anyone who tells you this is the best glute exercise. This is the best No, run away from them. There isn't. It's not definitive. First of all, what exercise is the best, and that's just such kind of a loaded question because the best for what, for who, for how long, all that stuff matters.
Yeah.
Really, we want to increase the weight that we're lifting, the reps that we're doing, and or if we can't, then add more sets or total workload. And so the best way to do that, I mean, you're not going to be able to add sets of squats and Bulgarian split squats to infinity. I mean, for me, two hard sets of Bulgarian split squats, and I'm about done.
Yeah, it's like
after that, I got to move on to something else because I'm no longer excited about it. My legs are cooked. I feel like same thing with like real heavy squat sets. I can do a little bit more with those, but it takes a lot more time to warm up. There's
the resting time as well.
The resting time is longer, right? So like,
you got to take that for account for yourself.
Yes, you do. That's a good point. We didn't talk about earlier was having making sure that this fits your time budget too.
Yeah.
And while squats are great return on your investment for your time, they definitely take longer to warm up into. You've got to take more warm up sets because you're putting a lot of weight on your back and there's a lot of moving parts. So your knees and your hips and your lower back, your ankles, they all have to kind of warm up together.
Yeah.
Whereas the hip thrust, although it's technically a compound movement, it's really just your glutes and hamstrings. You can do a couple warm up sets
and you can get into it. You know, it's not like a free weight like a back squat.
Yeah.
You kind of get in there and you just kind of go with the motion of how the machine allows you to be. So
yeah, and your risk of injury is a lot less.
Yeah.
You know, with back squats, your risk of injury is a little higher, especially if you don't deload or you just keep adding weight every week and adding reps and adding sets
and relying on your belt more than your forearms.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas things like the hip thrust, the kickbacks, the risk of injury is way smaller, and you can get away with doing a lot more and pushing hard in a way that's safe. That's not going to throw your back out.
And arguably getting similar results as back squats.
Yeah.
So, on top of that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see like if I don't know, maybe they have these studies and I just haven't seen them yet, but
or they're ongoing right now, maybe.
Yeah, if there was a study that showed like, okay, if you did 9 sets of hip thrust in the week, 3 on Monday, 3 on Wednesday, 3 on Friday, would that contribute to the same amount of muscle growth as if you did 25 sets of glute kickbacks or abduction machine? Now you're kind of targeting something with the abduction machine. So let's go with kickbacks. You do cable kickbacks, 20 sets. Does that equal 9 hip thrust sets? I don't know. That would be interesting to know, you know?
Yeah. So that's why we say, just as of right now, it's always good to have a good variation and kind of leaving no stone unturned or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, and track your progress. Track your reps, track your weight, because
it never lies.
Yeah, you're going to be able to see, oh, I was getting stronger and now I'm not getting stronger, or I'm getting weaker. Okay, good. Then we need to back off. We need to drop our workload.
Yeah.
Or maybe change up our exercises for a little bit.
Yeah.
And
something just similar to that, maybe. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So by tuning in, I'm sure you were hoping to get an easy sale on, oh, here's the 3 best glute exercises. Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. You got to figure out what works for you. There's always going to be huge, tremendous value in hip thrust, squats, and then like some sort of like elevated front foot lunge or Bulgarian split squats. These are all going to be great, but you've got to take recovery into account, and you're not going to be able to recover from 20 hard sets of squats in a week. It's just not going to happen. So if you're trying to accumulate more sets, you might want to throw in some of these other variations that don't that you can still progressively overload, but they don't take too much out of your central nervous system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Coming soon will be a video demonstrating these exercises for the glutes. Hopefully, you guys stay tuned so we can put all of this into a visualization, so you can see exactly what we're talking about, and maybe we'll take you through a virtual glute program here coming up soon.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Until next time.
Later, guys.